Describe, though, what you say violation of human rights.
Libyan Coast Guard shooting to the migrant boat. It's like an attempt of homicide and completely no search and rescue. If the NGOs were not there, public opinion would not even know what is happening in the Mediterranean Sea. We are not taking a lot of people to Europe. What we are doing is we are documenting and witnessing.
Hello, this is the Brussels Signal Studio. My name is Justin Stairs and we're happy to have a Euro MP for you. Her name is Cecilia Strada. Thank you for coming to the studio, Mrs.
Thank you for the invitation.
Cecilia is an independent MEP, though sits in the European Parliament with the Socialists and Democrats group. She is one of 21 Italian MEPs and she hails from Milan. She's on the delegation to the Mashrek countries. She sits on the Civil Liberties Committee in the Parliament, and she has a long history in humanitarian work. Her father set up an NGO Emergency, which she also took over as president. This NGO provides free medical treatment to victims of war. She is now a full-time MEP, elected in June, correct? Okay, elected in June. So, your speciality, you have spent time working with migrants, including, you have just told me, time in the Mediterranean on these NGO rescue boats. Is that true?
Completely true.
And so how much time and what kind of rescue missions were you personally involved in?
Well, I was working with this Italian NGO, quite a young NGO called Rescue People, Saving People. And before I had some missions with another Italian NGO, which is called Mediterranean. And in Italy, it's very hard to talk about search and rescue. We have been witnessing criminalization of migrant people, of people on the move, of people crossing the Mediterranean Sea. And in parallel, we have been witnessing a strong criminalization of the solidarity movements, of the NGOs that try to help them. So we've been accused of being in complicity with human traffickers, etc. There were a number of tentative of trials. None of them succeeded because all the time every NGO was completely acquitted by the allegations, because what actually we do at sea is 100% or maybe 150% respecting the International Convention about saving life at sea, respecting Italian laws, respecting the UN Charter and the Italian Constitution. So we are completely abiding the law. What is wrong with the NGOs working in the Mediterranean Sea? I don't think that this accusation and this war against NGOs is because they save life. It's because they are witness. From the vessels or from the monitoring planes from Sea-Watch, for example, we were able to be witness and to document the dire violation of human rights committed at sea, for example, by the Libyan Coast Guard or the Tunisian Coast Guard, which are actually partners of European governments and the EU.
Describe, though, what you say violation of human rights. What do you mean?
Violation of human rights. For example, is we have footage. We have footage of Libyan Coast Guard shooting to the migrant boats, or maneuvering in a super dangerous way, and with people falling in the water. So in some cases, really, it's like this attempt of homicide and completely no search and rescue. And this is recorded by those who are there. Who's there? The NGOs. No one else is there. And if the NGOs were not there, we would not. The public opinion would not even know what is happening in the Mediterranean Sea. So I think the key point in trying to stop the NGOs is not because we are saving people, and not because they are some right-wing governments likes to say in Italy. We are supporters of this invasion. No, not an invasion. I mean, the people that arrives in Europe with NGO vessels are a sharp minority, amounting to 10-12% of the people arriving by sea to Italy. Vast majority is autonomous arrivals or saved by Italian Coast Guard. So we are not taking a lot of people to Europe. What we are doing is we are documenting and witnessing.
So can you give me an example of the kind of thing you did? You got onto a boat with your colleagues, and what did you do exactly?
Well, let me tell you, my last mission was last September, and we sailed from Sicily. We headed south to international waters. All these operations are in international waters, in those that are called SAR zones, which means search and rescue areas. There's still international water, but these are areas where the states have responsibility and obligations to cooperate to help save people at sea. So we headed actually to south of Lampedusa towards Tunisia, because that was the moment where thousands and thousands and thousands of people were put into these things that I don't dare to call boat, because actually they were iron things, yelled together on the beach of Sfax, and they are completely not seaworthy. So of course they sink very quickly, and we were there. We had a couple of informations from a monitoring plane from Pilote Volontaire. We headed to the spot, couldn't find anything. That at a certain point, and it was night. And as you mentioned, I've been working in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Sudan, but that was definitely in war-torn countries, in war hospitals. But that was like the most horrible night of my life, because it was night, there was no moon, and at high sea, really you can't tell the difference between the sea and sky and the night. And we just performed the rescue of 46 people on an iron boat, and then we heard some people shouting, and we found another boat we were not aware of that was already sinking. And I mean, sinking, half of the boat was already underwater, and there were people shouting and crying, and what you do. And I was on the small boat, because you don't do rescue with the main vessel. You have these ribs, these rigid hull inflatable boats, and you use this for the rescue. I was on that rib, and what you try to do in that occasion is you try to keep people calm, first of all. Calm down, ne bougez pas, and then you hand them life jackets. Everyone needs to have a life jacket, so then if they fall at sea, it's easier to collect them. But there was no time. There was no time, because the boat was going down, and so we just throw life jackets. The ship shipwrecked, and we started to take people up from the water. And what I saw. We saw it immediately. We saw a woman lying face down. In that circumstances, what you do is the same as you do in war-torn countries. You need to do a triage. You can't stop there. If someone has no chance of survival, or maybe a small chance of survival, you can't stop. You need to go to those who have the highest chance of survival. And there was people in the water without life jackets, so we left the woman and we started collecting all the people from the water, and then we went back and collected the body of this person. We have been able to save 47 people on this second boat, and we collected the body of this woman. She was a grandmother. She embarked because she wanted to take her nephew, 12-year-old, to Europe, and this was the only way to give her nephew a future, and that's it. And
so you had a lot of people. Then you rescued a lot of people in one night.
And then we had we had 96 on board.
And so, on how big was the rescue boat you were on?
Oh, our boat. It's a poor organization. It's
small. Yeah, so there were lots of people on a small boat.
It's 39 meters, yeah.
And what did you do then with these people after
Then, of course, you inform authorities, and they assign you a port, which is, let me say, should be, according to international conventions and the resolution by the International Maritime Organization, the port that the authorities assign you should be the port with the minimum course deviation, which of course is a way to protect the the shipwreckers and the crew of the vessels, and also the vessels, because these are laws and resolutions that
So it should be a close by.
should be close by.
Right.
The Italian government now is sending the rescue ships very far, even like 900 nautical miles away.
Why?
Because they don't want them to be in an area.
To make it difficult?
To make it difficult.
And so where did they send you on this particular occasion?
No, we were a super small vessel, and we had this dead grandmother on board, and there was a completely havoc at sea in those days. So luckily we were told by the Coast Guard to go straight to Sicily. They never give you Lampedusa as a port. We went to Sicily. But other vessels, for example, the vessels from Médecins Sans Frontières, which is quite a bigger one, of the vessels by emergency that now have a vessel as well, are often sent to really 800 nautical miles, 900 nautical miles away from the area of operation, which means, of course, that the organization lose a lot of money.
I see.
And the sufferance of the people on board, I mean, people that have already been suffering are forced to stay 4 or 5 days more on a vessel.
Which port are you talking about? Which ports?
For example, Ravenna, Genova,
Okay.
Spezia, Northern Italy.
Northern Italy.
Northern Italy.
Northern Italy.
Well, of course, the area of operation is under Lampedusa. And yes, but we were assigned a port in Sicily. And when we were heading there, let me tell you this, because it's as a role in my decision to be a candidate, we were approaching the port, and all the people on board were like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And there was this guy that I pulled out from the water, and it was a super gentle, polite guy, because during the actual rescue, 1 minute he was like in the water fighting for his life. Then I took him on board of our rib, and next minute he was helping me. He was telling me, don't care about me. You can save the other first, like this. And so I went to this guy saying, okay, thank you, because you were so polite last night. You helped me, and so thank you. And thank you also for resisting there at sea while the boat was sinking. And he looked at me, and he told me, you don't have to thank me, because we had no choice. And his reasoning was like, I had no choice when I was in my home country. I had no choice but fleeing.
This is Tunisia, is this? Sorry, where is he from?
The boat departed from Tunisia, but actually they were from all sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay.
Yeah. And he said, I had no choice but leaving my country. And then I had no choice but going on a illegal route, because legal pathways were closed. And then we had no choice when we were basically kept as prisoners in Tunisia. And we had no choice when someone told us, this is the boat, and they could clearly see that it was not a boat. It was super dangerous thing. But they had no choice. And so his reasoning was like, we had no choice. You had choice. You could have stayed home, but you decided to be here and save us, so thank you. And so my reasoning now is, okay, it's true. Someone has the right to choose, and some others don't, as not only like from this side of the sea and across the Med, also in our home countries, also in Europe, there is someone who can choose and some others who can't. They don't have like the possibility to choose for their life. And so those of us, my reasoning is, those of us who are free to choose must choose wisely.
Okay.
And then thinking about this guy, I decided when the Democratic Party proposed me to be a candidate, I thought of him and I said, yes, I can choose, so I will do this.
And do you remember on this, but this was September of this year or of last year?
Last year.
Okay. And do you remember how many men, how many women, how many children approximately in the 90 that you helped save? Do you remember?
In the 96, I would like 2/3 were men, men.
Or
young boys,
right,
yeah.
Right. Okay. And the others were women and children. Okay. Now, there are traffickers also, human traffickers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, how about this group? I mean, did they pay to get on that awful boat that they were on? Did they have to pay traffickers?
Sure, they had.
They did. And is in your experience, in your organization's experience, is almost everyone paying a human trafficker to cross the Mediterranean now? Is that what you have to do?
Basically everyone pays. And they pay, of course, a lot more than they would have paid if they were allowed to take plane from from Africa.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so.
So the trafficking business is huge. It's
Trafficking business is huge, and the only way to stop it is to open legal pathways. Because actually, what many governments, many politicians, also inside the EU, think that we can fight the traffickers by closing the borders and possibly paying the Libyan Coast Guard, a Tunisian Coast Guard, and other countries
like Turkey.
To keep the migrants in. This is not working. You cannot stop all the millions of people who worldwide need to flee their homes, or need to flee, or maybe they just have a dream like we do. And our sons and daughters, they move across Europe, they are migrating. Our sons and daughters, thank you very much, they are migrants, and but we don't perceive them as migrants. Other people's sons and daughters have dreams too. So, but for whatever reasons, if you want to come here to Europe, basically you don't have another solution than human traffickers.
Right.
Than to pay. And an example, we had this awful shipwreck last year in February in Cutro in Italy. And on board this vessel that crashed like 40 meters from the coast, after being spotted by a Frontex plane, by the way, and after that no search and rescue mission was decided by Italy, on board that vessel, it was a small sailing vessel, there were women coming from Afghanistan, for example. How could it be possible that women is fleeing from Afghanistan, a country we've been occupying for 20 years? A journalist. There was, in particular, one woman. She was a journalist. She was working with the UN, and at the moment she needed to escape a country where women are not allowed to have a higher education anymore, or to sing or to speak loudly. She couldn't find another way than to pay the traffickers and embark in a super dangerous route, and first by land and then by boat.
Okay, now you mentioned Afghanistan. Now that, because I want to put the other side of the argument. As you know, I interviewed an MEP from Spain, Mr. Jorge Buxade. I hope I've pronounced his name right. And he has the opposite view to you on the migration debate. Let's call up what he said here in the Brussels Signal studio, and then I will ask you to comment on it.
This asylum and migration pact is a mistake, it's a failure. We live that in Spain. People are arriving from Afghanistan. They are not refugees. From Afghanistan to Spain, there are 10 states, 9 Islamic states. The other is Israel. And they don't remain in these states, no?
Okay. How do you respond to that? The idea being that there are many countries where the person you mentioned, the woman from Afghanistan, could have stayed, but she made it all the way to Spain.
First of all, I mean, talking about reality, the vast majority of refugees in the world, the vast majority, are not coming to Europe. They are in neighboring countries. They want to stay near to their home. So the vast majority of refugees in the world are hosted in Lebanon, in Jordan, and in Pakistan, and certainly not in Europe. But if you were forced to flee your country, I mean, taking maybe your grandchildren with you, would you like to stop in Lebanon? Would you like to stop where? Actually, every one of us would like to go where the human rights are guaranteed. So, given that, again, vast majority of refugees are not coming here, a small minority is coming here, asylum, it's a human right, and it's a duty. Now, all the member states need to present their implementation plans for the pact, and Europe has 2 years to fully implement the pact on migration and asylum. we as Democratic Party, as Socialists and Democrats inside the Libya Committee, we will start with the scrutiny of the plans by member states, because we are concerned that some member states will try to opt out. Some other will try to go a bit further than the provisions of the pact. Our concern is for the right to asylum and the respect of fundamental human rights. So we will start working as soon as we have the plans.
Okay, now what about the difference between asylum seekers and economic migrants? I mean, of the people who are arriving in Europe, obviously some are, legally speaking, asylum seekers, and there are others, surely you would agree, that are what we could call economic migrants, people looking for a better life. The asylum seekers by law have the right to ask for asylum in Europe, but in theory the economic migrants do not, correct? Legally speaking, this is the situation. Is that correct?
It's correct. And so sometimes you can hear conversations like, no, for sure we will respect the refugees. Once there was a minister in Italy who was talking about the true refugees and to distinguish from the false refugees.
From the economic migrants?
From the economic migrants. By the way, talking about reality, a lot of politicians like to talk about the invasion of Europe. We have the perception, sometimes we have the perception, of course, fueled by certain propaganda and fake news, that we have never seen something like this before, but actually the ratio of people on the move is like 3%. People that are living in a country different than the one they were born in. 3%. That means that 97% of the world population is not migrant, is living in their home countries.
Okay.
So, and this percentage is stable since when we collect data. So what has changed are the roots, not the volume of the population on the move.
Okay.
We were migrants before.
Listen, I'm a migrant here in the sense that
but now the courses have changed, and this gives us the perception that we never seen anything like this before, but it's always been like this. So,
but what about
talking
this
about
difference?
economic migrants?
Yeah,
of course,
right. The difference between the two.
Legally there's difference, but there's one fact: we need economic migrants.
Okay.
Our economies need economic migrants. My country, Italy, and this is not me or the NGOs, but the governor of the Bank of Italy is crystal clear about we need these workers. Otherwise, in 20 years, we will shut down the light of the country, because in 20
years... declining population.
Yes, we are in... in 20 years, we will have a ratio between occupied and non-occupied people in Italy 1-to-1. That means we will really shut down the lights.
Okay.
The country will stop. So we need these people. How can we get... And Confindustria, all the companies are asking for these people to come.
Okay. So you think that obviously the asylum seekers, but also we should be making space for the economic migrants too. Okay. So
we need them. But the fact is, we need legal pathways to let them come here. Because if we are concerned, of course, I'm concerned about the loss of human life. But even if we are all concerned about our security, then you want to open safe and legal pathways.
And what about processing outside of Europe? Lots of people talking about it now. Your country.
Yeah, but at the moment, this is not abiding to EU legislation. So at the moment, no, it's something that we can't do. And yes, there was quite a big talking about this Albania model,
right?
And also we had a couple of plenary in Strasbourg where a lot of MPs from the right were like, oh, we are looking with interest to this model. And then what happened? Now no one is mentioning Albania anymore for the moment, because the center in Albania is a complete failure. It's an expensive money from taxpayers, which is around 1 billion, something like that. And it's completely empty at the moment. There were 2 tries from the government to bring people there. intercepted at sea. In one case, there were like 16 people, and other case there were 14 or 12, something like that.
The courts have...
the court said, no, sorry.
But
you
what
can't
about
keep
the
them.
principle? Do you agree with the principle or not?
I completely don't agree.
Why
Don't
not?
agree because it's... because no, I mean you need to take the responsibility of the people asking asylum to your country. You cannot, first of all, you cannot hide them there, and to think that we can set up like hotspots or a hub for repatriation or for asylum seekers in third countries means, like we were saying before about the witness at sea. It's super interesting for the government, for sure, to take these hotspots, to build these hotspots far away from civil society, far away from witnesses. But then you have a number of problems from a legal side and a humanitarian point of view. So I'm completely not agree with the Armenian model. But on one thing, I agree with the president, with the premier Giorgia Meloni. She said it was a super courageous model, and and this I agree, because it takes some courage to waste the money of the Italian taxpayer in this way.
Okay, and what about the argument that yes, I mean population decline? I think it's accepted now. It's accepted theory. It's not just Italy. Lots of countries are in decline. What about the people who say yes, we are going to need migrants, but can't we have migrants who, culturally speaking, are closer to us? This is the Ukraine argument, for example. There are lots of asylum seekers, mostly fleeing war, who have been integrated into nearby countries, according to what people say here and what I read, fairly successfully. And some people say, well, for example, Syria now. Syria is being taken over by a terrorist organization, according to the interviews I've done here. And there are fears that Syria could become a breeding ground for jihadist-type organizations in the chaos that follows the fall of Assad. So there are concerns that if there is a new wave of migrants from Syria, there could be terrorists among them. So people are more concerned about migration from certain parts of the world than from others. What do you say to people who make this point?
I think that also here is a matter of, sorry to say, but double standards. The reception of Ukrainian people, which was our duty, showed us clearly that it's not impossible to welcome people as we can, as the political will that is lacking. And in the same time that we were in Italy welcoming hundreds, thousands of Ukrainian people, we were shouting at the invasion because we had some 100,000 in 1 year people arriving from the sea. So I think it's a double standard. It's a double standard, and then fueled by propaganda. And this explains why a lot of countries already said we are suspending asylum requests from Syria. But this is exactly the moment to stay with the population, to stand with the Syrian population, because for sure some of them may want to return as soon as possible to Syria. Some of them may want to leave Syria. In Syria, we know what the situation was before. A dire humanitarian crisis with like half of the population is displaced, 7 million people is internally displaced, and we have another 6 million of refugees outside the country. By the way, where are those refugees? 3/4 of them are in neighboring countries. Again, they're not coming to
There are
Europe.
lots in Turkey, millions in Turkey.
Exactly.
But what about this argument that the people from certain countries are less culturally compatible with Europeans? For example, respect for women's rights. There is now a history of respect for women's rights in Europe throughout the European Union. Whereas in countries in the Middle East, I'm sure you'd admit, this is a big issue, right? So these people are more difficult to integrate, have more trouble integrating in Europe because of issues such as respect for women.
Well, I think
is that a fair point or not?
In Italy, we have I think one woman is killed every other day, something like that, by an Italian person in 90% of the cases, so they could easily integrate anyone who has trouble with women could easily integrate with the patriarchy.
I take your point, but nevertheless, in Italy...
No, it was just a joke, but of course we need to work on integration, and we are asking the respect for human rights. Basically, we are asking for the respect, should be asking for the respect of Italian laws, and that's it. Do we need better integration processes? Yes, completely. Yes, starting from language courses. Do we need different models? Yes. In Italy, for example, we had a model of integration in small groups and small realities. But now the government decided, no, it's time for big numbers. So we have a big reception center. Of course, it's very different to integrate 30 people in one small country, or have 300 people in one.
Right, it depends on the size of the local population and the number of people arriving.
But this makes a difference on integration, because of course you can provide less services, less courses, less work, etc. So definitely we need to work on the integration. We are a big continent. We can't be scared about, but if these people come here, they don't respect our women. First of all, we should start respecting our women, and then I think it's simply propaganda. It's not a real concern.
Okay. Because, right, I mean, I remember, for example, when the last Syrian crisis, in fact, here in Belgium, when there were lots of Syrians arriving, the Belgian authorities actually printed information for the arrivals that said a number of unusual things. For example, they were teaching the arrivals that prostitution is legal and prostitutes have to be respected, for example, about gay rights, men can kiss in public, this kind of thing. But surely there are lots of significant cultural issues that are very different here in Europe. Even within Europe, there are differences. But if you compare Europe to the Middle East, these differences are very large, though, surely. This is not a small issue, is it? You're saying it's a small issue?
I think it's not something that should make us decide to build walls. I mean,
to be what? Sorry,
walls.
To build walls.
Yeah,
right.
We need to work on integration. Okay. We need to spread the respect for fundamental human rights. Okay. For sure, it's completely different. The attitude towards homosexuality, for example, right. in Afghanistan or in right. Denmark,
right,
like day and night, is completely different.
Right.
But again, homosexual people are fleeing from Afghanistan to ask asylum here. Okay. So if our response is to say, no, too much cultural difference, there will be not possible to integrate them, we are making a mistake. And the key, I think, is respect for human rights here and there. And with the, let me say, with real investments on social policies, real investments on integration, I think we can easily overcome these fears.
Okay. And now I know you want to talk about Gaza. We'll talk about Gaza, but before we do, one more question on this. And in fact, you mentioned it just now, investment, because obviously welcoming migrants, respecting human rights, obviously requires investment, i.e. money. Now, there was a story, again, here in Belgium. I read the local newspapers, and there was a story a few years back in Belgium about the Flemish government, which obviously was providing centres for migrant arrivals at a rate, there was something about 100 a day or something like that. And at the same time was imposing budget cuts on the suicide prevention centre, which is obviously used by Flemings. And there was a big scandal. Look, you're spending all this money on immigrant arrivals, and at the same time, you're cutting services to Flemings, including social services that people need. So there is obviously money is a question here, and given budgets are constrained, I mean, one of the arguments is that we don't have the money to welcome these people or to integrate them when we have lots of problems here in our own countries, right? How do you answer that argument?
This, of course, is an issue, because when the population in Europe has the perception that money is not enough, and so if you're putting your money there, you're taking money away from me. Of course, this is an issue, and but it's very connected to our rights here. So if I have everything that I need, I will not complain because you are building a center for immigrants. If I have problem in getting healthcare when I need, yes, I will do. Probably I will complain. In Italy, there's estimates of some 4 million people that cannot afford medical care anymore. And so, for sure, you will find people who tell you, okay, I can't get healthcare and you are wasting money building the center in Albania. I agree. Probably the money spent for the center in Albania should be put into the public health system. But here the fact is promoting fundamental rights, guaranteeing fundamental rights to the citizens. That's it. And I don't think that if we are missing our fundamental rights, it's because we are spending money on the immigrants. I don't think this is the case. And we could find more money, for example, taxing the rich, maybe.
Okay. It's a taxation issue.
Maybe. There's a lot of things that we can do. And by the way, we also need to remember that migrants that arrive to Europe and become resident in Europe then are part of our economy. They are building our economy. They are making money for the services for all the population. So, for example, in Italy, where the resident population with foreign background are around 10% of the population, but contribute to the 12% of the internal domestic product. And this gap is because they pay more than the service they receive back. And also because in many cases, at the end of the working life, they don't retire in Italy or in Europe. They go back to their home country, for example. So at the end, the migrant population that wants to stay in Europe is completely 100% part of our economy, and they are working to provide services for everyone. So I think that the enemy here is not a single person or group of person coming from abroad. The enemy here is the idea that we need to fight for the resources between the last one and the very last one, and we need to stop it.
Okay, now you come here to the studio from a meeting about Gaza, is that correct?
Yeah.
So go. What's going on in Gaza today? What was your meeting about?
We had actually we had a working group of the Socialists and Democrats and members of the Davy Committee, because I'm also a substitute member in the Davy Committee, and we had an exchange of views with several UN.
That's the Development Committee.
Yes, the Development Committee,
right. Yeah.
And which represents the world that I'm coming from, the NGOs,
right.
And so I feel very at home in the Davy Committee. And we had this exchange of views with several representatives of UN agencies, from the World Food Programme to UNRWA to UNICEF, to have data from updated reports from the field, and to understand what we can do. Really, I was a humanitarian worker all my life, and I have many colleagues, of course. There are humanitarian workers and friends. Every one of them who has been in Gaza in the last year, they are telling me, I've never seen a crisis like this before. So, for example, today they were telling us that the price for 1 kilogram of flour to make bread was some $11 some months ago. Now it's over $200. $200 for 1 kilo of flour. There are women in northern Gaza that haven't taken a shower in 6 months. Because of course there is no system, there's no sewage system anymore. It's dangerous for the women to embark on a journey to get a shower. There's completely no products for menstrual hygiene. The mortality rate for maternal mortality rate and miscarriages have risen by 30%, 30% due to the war. So, problem in Gaza is access to humanitarian aid. Access to humanitarian aid that led to a famine in Gaza. People is already starving in Gaza. Children, of course, they pay the higher price. There's some, was telling us today, some maybe 19,000 children wounded or maimed. We need to remember this when we talk about deaths and wounded. We may think that, okay, these are dead, and these are the wounded will heal. No, in a situation of war on civilians, a wounded, that means amputated, mutilated, maimed. According to the WHO, at least 1/4 of the wounded in Gaza will require lifelong rehabilitation that they will not be able to get. So, to being wounded means that your life has changed forever, not that it's a scar that will heal. So the fact is, in Gaza, even if the war ended today, there will be consequences for years and years and years. People will be dying for years. And what is Europe doing to address the situation? Not enough. Not only not enough, but also there is a widespread attack to the UN system, which is very, very dangerous. And one of the points we discussed today was exactly this attack to the system. Secretary General was declared persona non grata in Israel. The Israeli parliament, the Knesset, approved this law anti-UNRWA that will get into action in January. And that will be a catastrophe inside the catastrophe, because UNRWA is completely irreplaceable. They're giving shelter, they're distributing food, providing education for
this is the UN agency.
Yeah, the UN agency, yes, UNRWA, which is under attack also inside the European Parliament. I'm sorry to say, but there are several members of the Parliament who are pushing to defund UNRWA, which is accused of complicity with terrorism, which is completely not true. And also the European Commission went through a deep audit inside the organization to understand if we could still fund with European money UNRWA. And the answer was yes. Not only we can, but we should. So if UNRWA will be banned to work, which is the point of these laws that will apply from January, no one knows what will happen. But apart from the survival of the Palestinian population, there is one more point I think is crucial. It's, again, double standards, because the Global South is watching us. They are watching us and they're starting to judge us. They are watching how we support Ukraine. Rightly so. They are watching us sending money, loans, weapons, support. Clearly, Russia is the invader, Ukraine is the victim, and we stand with the victim. We are not able to say basically a single word as European Committee, as the Council, about the violation of international humanitarian law that are going on since 1 year in Gaza. And this is a problem, because it's a problem because it affects our credibility. How can we ask Putin to refrain from committing war crimes which we are doing, if we are like blind and silent when war crimes and dire violation of international humanitarian laws are committed by the Israeli government, I think this is an issue. Maybe we don't see it clearly, but the rest of the world is watching us, and they see clearly, and they're whispering double standards. That's what you are doing. So I think the issue there, it's very serious, not only for the Palestinian population, but for our political credibility.
Cecilia Strada, many thanks for coming to the studio. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.